Our next project is called Kosmos Law. The history of space exploration in the late 20th century brought with it the discovery of many things, but perhaps most important, at least for us, was a kind of discovery of the Earth itself as a planet, not just as a world. And so for our program, the question of planetarity and indeed planetary governance, how is it that we may govern ourselves through the lens of our common planetary condition, is one that this project seeks to investigate rather directly. And for it, it develops an understanding of cosmos, with a K, in the distinction between cosmonaut and astronaut. The connotation of cosmos in this context is of a space that is not empty, but full. The empty space, in contrast to the empty space, this fullness makes all the difference. The history of terra nullius, of a space that is understood as empty, was intrinsic to the justifications of colonial expansion and to a greater or lesser degree of some of the ways in which space exploration is contextualized and mobilized today. But alternatives are indeed possible. The project is also part of a kind of revitalization or rediscovery of the philosophy of space and outer space, or an understanding of philosophy through this condition of planetarity. Throughout that period in the late 20th century, when the Apollo program and Soviet programs were in full swing, philosophy was deeply interested in questions of space. We're perhaps familiar with Heidegger and Arendt's more than a little bit reactionary writings on this subject. But the question of what it meant to be human, what it meant to be an earthling, as seen through the question of space, was taken as a given. It's ironic then, perhaps, that philosophy let go of that question, or so it would seem, at least for some time since that era, given the fact that it's really since the end of the Apollo and Soviet program that we've learned so much about the actual geology of our solar system, indeed the positions of the existence and positions of exoplanets, as Lisa Masseri will talk about, and the existence of dark matter and dark energy, which makes up most anything. During this period, where we really learned most of what we know, it seems, philosophy was more or less silent, or so it would seem. Perhaps the question of space, and because the question of the planetary was folded into other discussions about satellite systems, the minimum viable closed-loop architectures, geographic sensing and imaging, and indeed the fate and futurity of the planet through the lens of the so-called Anthropocene. Perhaps these, in fact, were part of philosophy, anthropology, critical theory of space all along. And if so, perhaps they should be more explicitly located there. And if so, a project like Kosmos Law may provide some lessons for their orientation. More specifically, instead of seeing space or outer space as it was, colloquially understood as a kind of extension of the Earth. The Earth is a center and would have these kinds of prostheses that are variously external to it around some arbitrary boundary points like the Kármán line. Instead, the starting presumption is instead of the Earth itself in space. We are in space right now. Now, as you'll see, the question of the orientation and origination of space law in the context of this presumed fullness, as I've indicated, is extremely important. One of the ways in which the project looks at the history of law, and the history of law and the way in which it's encountered space that it did not know how to inscribe or give territorial portraiture to is through the history of colonialism, in which spaces were, as indicated, presumed to be empty, coded as empty, as terra nullius, and so could be organized as if from a kind of ground zero. Instead, and then the implication then is that these descriptions of the periphery, the legal understandings of the periphery, came back to reorganize the core. The way the empty space, quote unquote, empty space was coded and organized, in fact, became the way in which that center was reorganized in that image. And this is part of the significance and importance of space law at this time. One, that it is a jurisdictional scale and scope that takes planetary scope and scale as its starting point, and with the implication that it may have the capacity to intervene and indeed govern on circumstances that are necessarily planetary in scope, but also in that it would, in doing so, perhaps reorganize, reinstitutionalize, restructure not only events that take place in space, phenomena, infrastructure, conditions out there, but indeed down here as well. That it could be a legal vision, a jurisdiction that is cognizant, once more, that we are in space right now, and that planetarity is not an extensional condition, but in fact, the starting point. So with that, I introduce Kosmos Law.
Hi, I'm Luiza. I'm an artist. I'm joining from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
Hi, I'm Vlad. I'm an architect and designer. I'm zooming from Kyiv, Ukraine.
Hi, I'm Elena. I'm an urban planner from Tbilisi, Georgia. We are presenting Kosmos Law, which looks into the history of space law and rethinks a framework for viable planetarity back on the Earth.